when we make the decision that we need to stop gambling and we decide that we actually want to stop gambling and try and get ourselves onto the path of recovery, one of the hardest things to know is where the support lays. Where do we get the support that we need to help support our recovery? And that's what I want to talk about in today's video. First and foremost, though, I do want to say that if you are coming to this video off the back of some form of extreme negative event, either directly related to your gambling or more openly related to your gambling, so maybe it's a fallout with a partner, a family member, or you've lost your job, or something very, very severe in your life has happened because of your gambling, and you are feeling any thoughts of self-destruction or self-harm or any thoughts of that nature, then may I suggest that before you watch any more of this or any more of my videos or continue to seek help online, that you contact the Samaritans. I have first-hand experience with the Samaritans. They are absolutely fantastic people, and they are certainly the first place to turn if you're having dark, suicidal, or otherwise thoughts of self-harm. There will be a number in the description below. Give them a call, and then hopefully you can come back here and we can get back onto the right path for recovery. That being said, like I say, I want to look at the different sources of support, and there are plenty when it comes to getting into and maintaining a recovery. When I look at the analytics for my YouTube channel, it's quite apparent to me that people seem to come here off the back of a gambling loss. The times and the days of the week and the days of the month that views are most prolific would indicate that people have had a gambling session, have decided that enough is enough and to draw a line under their addiction, and then come in the pursuit of help. Weekends, early hours of the morning, very late in the evening, and around payday are times when I get more and more people come and click on these videos. So if that is you, or in your similar situation, or even if you're in the early stages of recovery, then watch this video and I will tell you all about, in my experience, the different sources of support when it comes to gambling addiction. Now let's get this one out the way first, all right? Me. And by me, I mean myself and other people on YouTube and other video sites, I presume, that talk about gambling addiction and sort of offer their experiences and maybe bits of advice as to how to get into and maintain a recovery. I always say, and I always put the caveat in all my videos, that I am not an expert. I'm not a licensed therapist. I have no gambling counselling training or anything like that, okay? So my words, what I talk about is purely my experience, what works for me, what hasn't worked for me. And the reason I share this is not because of any reason other than I hope people might pick up on certain things that have worked for me, and maybe they try them themselves and they work for them, and that's great. But also, I think, possibly more importantly, people can watch these videos, listen to my experiences, listen to my stories, all the negative stories I've got about my gambling addiction, and they can realise that they're not alone. There are plenty, and I am far, far from being, unique. There are plenty of people that are in that position at the moment, or have been in that position, and have got onto that path and actually found, an improved life further down the road of recovery. So that's where I see my role, and there are, like I say, lots of other great channels here on YouTube who will talk about their experiences with gambling and share their tips for recovery. So I don't think I am a first line of support for gambling addiction. But if you want to watch my videos and it kind of runs alongside your recovery and you can find something to relate to and you can realise that, hey, I'm not alone, I can beat this, then that's great. And I think YouTube and I think forums and all that sort of thing as a whole provide a very valuable role in that, because it makes you feel, even if you're not surrounded immediately by people, in your immediate circle, there is communities that can help support you. And let's face it, this will be the time I plug my Patreon. There will be a link in the description below. Thank you to everyone who's joined the Patreon. I'm building a small community over there, which is great. There'll be additional videos, additional conversations and stuff like that. Personalised DMs. I will try and get back to people as quickly as possible. So yeah, I appreciate everyone who supports me in that way. And like I say, link in the description below. If you don't like to support me in that way, that's absolutely cool. Just watch the videos, like, subscribe, and do all that great YouTubey stuff. Much, much appreciated. So who else there's? Like I say, First Line Samaritans, or other organisations, depending on where you may be in the world. Then, as I've spoken about quite recently in my gambling recovery video, the people closest to you. And this is going to probably be most relevant if you are in a long-term relationship, so speaking to your partner, but also speaking to close family members and your closest friends. Now, these are often certainly amongst the list of people I'm going to go through today, these are the people that are hardest to speak to, because these are the people with whom you have the closest relationships. And if you are in any way hesitant because you fear that your revelation may damage your relationships, then of course there's going to be that psychological barrier to talking to them. It is, however, essential that we speak to these people. Now, I'm not saying that these are the first people you have to speak to. These will be the most important people you have to speak to. But these don't have to be your first line of support, all right? But it will be essential at some point that you speak particularly to your partner or to anyone for whom you have financial responsibility, or for anyone you share financial responsibility with. The reason it's important to share, your addiction with these people is because A, if it is a financial arrangement like a joint account or something like that, you owe them an explanation basically. But also, and most importantly, from a personal, slightly selfish perspective, these are the people who are likely to offer you the greatest level of support. These are the people that are closest to you, that you can talk to most often, that are likely to love you and care about you the most and want the best for you and have your best interests at heart. And these are the people also with whom you probably spend the most time. So they proactively will be the best eyes and ears looking out for you and making sure that you don't gamble as and when gambling urges inevitably arise, because they will. Beyond that, you can speak to other friends. Now, other friends are great because you can sometimes be a little bit more open with people who are a little bit more on the periphery of your social circle. Sometimes you might find that they have had, and this is something I experienced, even people that, like I spoke to my boss, even people that I didn't realise had ever gambled have, when I've opened up about my addiction, have spoken to me about their issues with gambling. And this, again, extends your support network and gives you a wider variety of people that you may feel more comfortable opening up with about more extreme accounts of your gambling or more extreme emotions associated with the addiction. And as always, the more people you speak to, the more eyes and ears you've got looking out for you to proactively prevent you from gambling should and when the urges occur. People who have active control over your gambling. Now, these won't necessarily be friends or family or even associates or colleagues. These will be people that you can speak to who can act as a physical block. Now, I spoke a lot about physical blocks in my quitting gambling video, so I won't go over too much of the same ground. However, just to reiterate something I've told a million times, when I quit gambling, I spoke to the landlord of my local pub where I used to play the fruit machines, told him about my gambling addiction, told him to ban me if he saw me gambling. I spoke to the regulars in the local pub, some of whom I sort of classed as periphery friends, but a lot of them were just regulars in there. Spoke to them, so they were again looking out for me. I spoke to the manager of my local Ladbrokes bookmakers, who was always in there. I don't know how, his overtime must have been insane, but he was always in there. So I spoke to him about it. That was part of my self-exclusion, but also it was a little bit of a back and forth between us. And you can basically extend this out to anyone that you see regularly in a gambling scenario. So be that maybe the workers at your local bingo hall or the staff at your local arcade or whatever it is, wherever your gambling of choice, you speak to the people who have direct control over whether or not you are able to access gambling in various establishments. All right, now for online gambling, obviously there'll be other types of blocks in place, and there'll be a link to GamStop in the description below. Very, very powerful tool. Finally, no, not finally. What am I talking about? This isn't finally at all. I missed out quite a serious one here. Counsellors and therapists, right? Now, I spoke in my last, I think it might be my last video. I lose track. I'm making so many at the moment. In my last video, I spoke about my experience with gambling counselling and how actually personally, I didn't find it gave me an awful lot that I didn't know already, and it didn't add an awful lot to my recovery, except to make me consistently answerable to someone else. I had regular weekly gambling sessions with the same lady, who was lovely by the way, and did her best to help me, and actually, had I not have been gambling for so many years, maybe I would have learnt a lot of new stuff. So, as with all these things, if you haven't tried it and you're still gambling and you want to recover, then try it. Gambling counselling, is someone who you're answerable to, who you report to almost in a probation type fashion. That's a story for another day. Probation type fashion that you go to every week and you tell them, I've not been gambling. All right. Now, of course, you can lie, but let's face it, you're only lying to yourself, aren't you? So that is certainly worth a go. And again, there'll be links to Break Even and anyone else I can think of in the description below. But not only do you necessarily want to look for a counsellor for you to address your gambling, which you can often do for free, if you have the means and the access to, it is quite often worth looking at a therapist or a counsellor who can help you to discover, help you to unearth the reasons behind your gambling in the first place. Okay, now this does sound quite airy-fairy and childhood trauma and all this sort of stuff, right? But I would suggest to anyone who has the means and access to a therapist to speak to them. You will talk about things other than your gambling, but it may well help you to unearth some deep-seated insecurities, some reason why you feel the need to indulge in activities and harmful behaviours as a form of escapism, and lots of other stuff besides that may not even have anything to do with your gambling, but may actually ultimately lead you to a better frame of mind, to a better psychological position, to better mental health, which will definitely be a benefit and a boost to your ongoing recovery. So if you can, have access to that, then counselling for gambling, but also counselling and maybe therapy just for yourself in general, like I say, which will put you in a better mindset to address any problem in your life, which does include your gambling recovery. Finally, and I've written here, new people. Now this could be anyone, because when we quit gambling, as I've said before, one of the biggest issues we have is we suddenly find ourselves with an abundance of time. Very quickly as a side note, only because I think this is very important, when we suddenly discover that we have this abundance of time because we've stopped gambling, or stopped drinking, or stopped doing whatever, in the very, very short term, it is just essential that we fill this time. It's essential that we do something to stop us from acting on, urges because we've got all this free time. Ideally, this would be something productive, like going to the gym or charity work or reading a book or doing all these things that the self-help gurus will tell you to do, okay? Replace a negative habit with a positive one. And that's great. But in the short term, what you want to do is just fill your time. It doesn't matter if that's computer games. It doesn't matter if that's going for a walk. It doesn't matter if that's, whatever it is, as long as it's not harmful, right? In the longer term, what you want to do is maybe try and discover new hobbies. That's easier said than done, because I've tried to do that, and you can try a whole wealth of things before you find something you actually enjoy. But try everything. Do stuff, right? Keep yourself busy, and you will meet new people. You will meet new people through sports clubs, through gyms, through chess club, through bloody, whatever, Whatever you choose to do, whatever new activities you choose to do. It doesn't have to be a bona fide hobby, just something else that gets you out of the house and gets you doing things with other people. And you will have new people to speak to. I'm not saying you have to go and, your first day at tennis club, you have to go and speak to these people about your gambling. No, you speak to them about tennis. You speak to them about your life. You speak to them about your kids or your family or your holiday you're planning to go on or what you want to do with your life or whatever. Right? Just speak to them about general stuff. Speak to them about general stuff. And then you can start moving your circle from maybe people who have a negative impact on your life to people who have a more positive impact on your life. You meet new people, you discover new things, you start going out in different groups that aren't so related to gambling. One thing I missed off this list, and this is completely my fault, is Gamblers Anonymous. This is effectively what I just said, but with gamblers. Now, like myself, it's cross between sort of like me and the other people on YouTube and the group I just spoke about. It's speaking to a lot of people about your problems, but people who will understand. My last video, I spoke about when you open up to the people closest to you, they may give you very poor advice. They may give well-meaning, but maybe ill-informed advice about your ability to quit gambling. If you speak to Gamblers Anonymous, you go to a meeting, then everyone in that room is likely to have experienced something similar to you. And I did say, again in the last video, that I think the only people who truly understand this addiction are the people who have experienced it firsthand. So whilst I have misgivings about some of the ethos behind Gamblers Anonymous, there is absolutely no denying their efficacy. There is no denying that getting in a room with people and sharing your story is cathartic. And if you do go and you do continue to go to meetings, then it again provides that almost probationary service where you have to go in, report in, and tell people that, I did another week without gambling, and you will find all the support there, and you will find stories very, very similar to your own. Like I say, this is why I share my stories, but you'll find stories similar to your own, and you can relate to these people in a way that you can't necessarily relate to someone with a therapy or counselling qualification. Probably put those in the wrong order, to be completely honest with you, but I sort of wrote some down and then thought of more as I went through, but hopefully that's helpful. Like I say, there will be links in the description below. Scroll to the bottom of the description and there's some links to organisations like GamCare, Break Even, the Samaritans, Gamblers Anonymous, I think, are on there. I think there's debt management charities and all sorts of other stuff right down there, which great resources for helping you in your recovery, in the early and mid stages of recovery. There's also a link to my Patreon. Hey, so give that a click, and hopefully I'll sort of hear from all you guys soon. But until then, stay safe, stay sane. Thanks very much for watching, and I shall catch you soon. Take it easy, guys.